U.S. Senator John Boozman on the road and one Arkansan honored at the U.S. Capitol on this week's episode of Arkies in the Beltway, albeit outside the Beltway. Let's not waste any time. Welcome to this edition of Arkies in the Beltway for the week is September 24th, 2023. I'm Alex Thomas, the Washington correspondent here at the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, and here's what's going on. We start this episode outside of the Beltway in Dover, Delaware, where the Delaware Agriculture Museum is located. U.S. Senator John Boozman traveling to Delaware to take part in an agriculture roundtable focused on the Farm Bill. Delaware Senator Chris Coons hosting the event. This is another step in trying to finalize the text for the Farm Bill. Senator John Boozman is playing a leading role in that, given that he is the top Republican on the Senate Agriculture Committee.
Agriculture is not a one-size-fits-all thing, and so there's unique problems in Delaware compared to Arkansas and the rest of the country, but there's also vast similarities.
We argue that the modern broiler industry in America was born here 100 years ago. Thank you so much for coming, John. It meant a lot to the folks here who had a chance to talk with you about the Farm Bill.
The multi-year Farm Bill includes programs related to nutrition, conservation, the farm safety net, among other things. It does expire this Saturday, September 30th. However, Boozman previously told the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette it's more likely that January 1st is the drop-dead date. Speaking of September 30th, that is the final day of the current fiscal year. Lawmakers trying to pass a spending plan to avoid a shutdown. If a shutdown does occur, most mandatory programs and essential services, such as Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, will continue. However, those services may be affected by staffing changes. Another important day this week is Wednesday, September 27th. That is the day for the second presidential debate for the Republican Party. That is taking place at the Reagan Library in California. It is set to begin that night at 8 o'clock. Fox Business and Univision will have coverage. Representative Steve Womack of Rogers honored this week at the U.S. Capitol. A portrait unveiled to recognize his time as the House Budget Committee chairman. He served as chairman from January 2018 to January 2019. His portrait will hang alongside other portraits of former chairmen. He says that's quite humbling in itself.
I would only ask is that, as I said in my remarks, that this portrait, that it would serve as an inspiration point for members of the committee to commit to doing their work, because everything in Washington begins with a budget.
The portrait, done by Massachusetts artist Robert Anderson. His other works include the portrait of former President George W. Bush, done for the National Portrait Gallery in Washington. And that'll do it for this week's episode of Arkies in the Beltway from the mobile set. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay up to date with all news involving Arkansas at arkansasonline.com. See what I'm up to. My social media handle is at AlexHouseThomas, and you can always send me an email at athomas@adgnewsroom.com. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week, hopefully from the normal set.